Guys and gals, welcome to Miyagi Mornings, episode 72. What do we got for you guys today? We're answering another question from MeWe. If you want to participate in Miyagi Mornings, the easiest way to likely get your question or issue talked about, get over to MeWe, friend me up. I will accept that probably within a day at the most, and then there is a sticky post at the top of my profile. Post your question or issue in the comment thread there, and we'll try to get to it. Today was an interesting one that I found when I started perusing through and, like a buffet and picking and choosing what I wanted to talk about. And it was, in my mind, what is the difference between entrepreneur and business owner? And I have to say this is something I haven't really put a lot of thought into in the past. And so I decided to see, well, what do other people say about this? And then I looked it up, and I'm like, I totally disagree with that. And that's why you tune into Miyagi Mornings, right? Because you don't get the same bullshit you get from everywhere else. What I found were a bunch of basically regurgitated articles that all said kind of the same thing. That are probably designed so that they can sell advertising and get traffic due to search engine optimization. It didn't seem like the person writing them, I read like several of them, and it didn't seem like there was an original thought in any one of them, except maybe the first one that everybody else emulated. And their basic assertion was that if you're a business owner, that just means you have an enterprise, you own a business. And to that, I agree with that. Obviously, if you own a business, if you are an owner or majority owner or sole owner of a business that is registered as a business, that operates as a business, you are a business owner. Where I kind of differed with them is when they talked about, well, what it doesn't mean to be an entrepreneur. And to them, an entrepreneur was a Steve Jobs or a Richard Branson. Someone that wants to innovate and build the next mega corporation, right? If you're not trying to change the world, you're a business owner, not an entrepreneur. That's the biggest pile of bullshit I ever heard in my life. And if you look at the title of today's video, you'll see it's entrepreneur versus business owner versus investor. And I thought by bringing investors in, I could give you a little bit better understanding of where I'm coming from in answering this question. So let's start out with what I think makes a person an entrepreneur. To me, entrepreneurship is mindset. It's mindset. I agree somewhat with the innovative concept that if you're trying to build the next great thing or create the next great thing out of thin air or take something and alter it and change the entire fabric of an economy, you probably are an entrepreneur. But I think it's kind of like when we talk about polymaths and they give people like, Leonardo da Vinci is an example of a polymath. And like if you're not a Da Vinci, you're not a polymath. That's retarded. I'm sorry, it is. That's like saying that if I train every day in martial arts and I'm an amateur mixed martial arts fighter, I'm not actually a mixed martial arts fighter unless I'm in UFC in the top 10 or something. Like or I'm not a martial artist. Let's think about it that way. Like unless you are like Bruce Lee or some shit, you're not a martial artist. If we have millions of people who would call themselves martial artists accurately. So I think entrepreneurship, you have 8-year-olds walking around that are being entrepreneurs because it's about the mindset. So, I almost want to say it's kind of like libertarianism and anarchy. Like, you say all anarchists are libertarians, but not all libertarians are anarchists. But it's not necessarily the case. I would say most entrepreneurs are business owners, but many business owners are not entrepreneurs. Maybe it'd be a way to alter it. So here's what I mean by that. If you got a kid that starts looking around his neighborhood and realizes, like, there's these guys and they drive a truck with a trailer and they bring a lawnmower and they mow lawns. And he's like, I wonder how much they get for that. So he goes over and talks to his neighbor and is like, Mr. Smith, like, how much money do you pay those guys to cut your grass? And Mr. Smith's like, $50 every time they cut my grass. And that kid's like, your lawn's not that big and I got a lawnmower right there. I'll do it for $25. That kid's an entrepreneur. He doesn't own a business. But remember what business ownership is in our world today. It is you have declared under a legal structure that you own a business. That kid, if he's smart and he keeps kind of side hustling his way through life, he's probably going to be a business owner at some point, one way or another. And he may actually have tons of little side hustles kind of as a conglomerate, never actually declare it a business, and never pay any taxes on it if he's like a purist agorist. And he's still an entrepreneur to me because it's a mindset of hustle. So let's look at a business owner that I would declare most likely, because I can't judge the individual. I'm just saying out of the group, most likely not really very entrepreneurial. would tend to be somebody like a franchise owner. Specifically a franchise owner of something, big and really set in stone, a McDonald's, a Domino's, right? Or even like a mechanic shop like Quick Car, I think is a franchise, right? So when you're a franchisor, franchisee, right? You basically buy a business in a box, so to say. So you get a loan and you buy this business, and it tells you everything that you're supposed to do exactly the way that you're supposed to do it. Now, I'm not saying you can't be an entrepreneur and own franchises. I'm saying if the only thing you do as a business owner is open up a single franchise for Quick Car or Domino's, you're probably not very entrepreneurial in your mindset. What you're looking for is kind of a guaranteed ROI. In some ways, you're an investor, but you're an active working investor working in and on your own business. And the reason I'd say it's not very entrepreneurial is it is by its very definition extremely limited in what you can do in order to grow your business. So basically, you have a mothership that tells you this is where, like if you're Quick Car, you're going to buy your oil from here, and it's probably us. You're going to pay us a royalty fee on every oil change you do. This is where you're going to get your filters. This is where you're going to get all your equipment. This is the type of building that you have to have. And many franchises, if you decide, hey, you know what, I can make money by adding this service, you can't. Right? Or you almost have to like break off a piece of your building and say that's separate, right, to please the mothership. So it's going to stifle entrepreneurship. I remember a talk that Gary Vaynerchuk did many, many years ago at the Web 2.0 conference, one of the first ones in New York City. And he said, I talked to a whole bunch of Domino's Pizza employees yesterday, and I told them, you're fucked. You can't do anything that I teach at all. Bring back the Noid was the only advice he had for them, right? And that's kind of where I'm coming from with business owners are people that have this single enterprise, but they also are only focused on that. And they also could be investors. That's where I wanted to bring this in that you can own a business or own a piece of a business and basically not touch it. And then you're an investor. And I also want to talk about people that think they're investors and they're not. So I think a person who evaluates anything, whether it's a business, a cryptocurrency, a stock, anything, and says, I'm going to take my money, I'm going to put it in here, and I'm looking for the return of investment against this investment. Like I talked about this on the podcast yesterday. That person is an investor. I think a person who contributes 5% or 10% to their 401k owns investments, but they're not an investor. They have no idea. Most people like that. And if you have a financial advisor, hopefully a good one, they're the investor that you've hired. You're not an investor. You just have money you've saved and somebody else is doing something with it. An investor actively goes out and controls their investments. Otherwise, right now I have some guys outside building a table for me on my outdoor kitchen. I'm not a table builder just because I hired them to build one, right? That's how I kind of look at investing. Unless you're actively doing it, you're not the investor. You're hiring an investor on your behalf. And if you're just throwing your money in mutual funds, you don't even know who that is, right? You don't have anybody. You can't even have a discussion with that person. You have some advisor that was handed your corporate account that you see like once every 2 years when they change the 401k and tells you to fill out the forms and tell you you're going to work till you're 70, right? That's not investing. That's owning investments. And I think there's a lot of people that are business owners that's how they own a business. They don't actively manage, run. They didn't found, they didn't develop, they didn't build the business. And when you get into franchisees and kind of tunnel vision business owners, you're kind of right in an overlap. You're kind of entrepreneurial, but you're really not. Because the entrepreneur is always figuring out, how can I do more? So a person could own a single business, and it's not a mega corporation, and they may be a hell of an entrepreneur. Okay, they may be constantly figuring out how to do more with what they have. Let's take it another way, though. Let's say a person that doesn't own a business, at least on paper, at all. Let's say somebody has a piece of property, and they're like, you know what? I've got some room on this property. I think what I'm going to break off like a half acre over there. I'm going to put in like 5 campsites. I'm going to make them really, really nice. And I'm going to put them out on Hip Camp. And I'm going to use that to make my property pay for part of itself. I also talked about this on the podcast yesterday. That's entrepreneurship. Because that's seeing the opportunity where other people do not. To me, that is the essence of entrepreneurship. Can 2 people look at the same thing? Or can 20 people look at the same thing? Or maybe even 100? Real entrepreneurs are rare. You get 100 people that look at it and go, oh, that's nice, piece of land. And you get one guy's like, The guy that does this when everybody else is like this, there's your entrepreneur, right? That's your entrepreneur. Your entrepreneur is the person that's like, wait a minute. I learned how to like propagate plants, and I'm on Nextdoor looking for like a free freezer or something because people give those away, and I see all these people talking about planting shit. Holy shit, I could just go out and grow a whole bunch of plants, put them on Nextdoor, and sell them, and I'm going to get money for free. That's entrepreneurship. So an entrepreneur, yes, may be the guy like Branson that goes into everything from vodka to airlines, but it also can just be the guy you never hear of. And in some ways, that is the perfect agorist. The perfect agorist is a person you don't know their name. They're not Jack Spirko, who's on the internet every day advertising what they do. They're the guy that's like the old, like I knew this dude that I met through a friend of a friend. We were hunting on property he owned. He owned the property. He leased it to a company that my friend worked for hunting. And this guy was in bib overalls. He was about 6'2", bit overweight, older gentleman. And if you've ever heard the song from Montgomery, I think it's Montgomery Gentry, where he says something like, see that old man there on the porch? He can buy your fancy car with $100 bills. He's literally that dude. The guy owns massive amounts of property. He's leasing it all out, both for timbering, for the pine industry, and for hunting, and for other things. And he's got 100 little things he's doing, but I doubt he owns a company. He may own a company that owns land, but it's not in the business of doing these things. I guarantee there's a whole lot of the stuff that goes on that isn't $100 bills. It's entrepreneurship, and so that I think is something that people really need to get their heads around if they want to have success in the modern world. You can be a business owner and you can be an investor, or you can be an investor that is investing in owning businesses, right? You can do all of those things and you can be okay. But if you want the control to be able to adapt to change, let's look at it this way. So Quick Car is a franchise for changing oil in cars. We have a move toward electric vehicles. Let's say we speed up that move. And a lot of the maintenance that's being done on conventional motors, because this isn't going away anytime soon, don't get me wrong, but let's just say that we're at the point where it really does start to go away. You're kind of at the mercy of Quick Car, the mothership, to figure out when to innovate and start offering new services. You can't just freely start doing it. If I'm wrong about Quick Car, if they're less controlling than that and you're a franchisee, don't get pissed at me. Most franchises would be that way. When Ray Kroc took over the McDonald's, bought out the McDonald brothers and started rolling out McDonald's across the whole world, he would go to individual franchises without telling them he was coming. And if he saw like somebody put up, like we're selling tamales or something because they're in South Texas, he would flip his shit and threaten to strip the guy of his franchise rights. Because you only sell and you only do what I say. So in that situation, it's very hard to adapt. You can maybe advertise your location, but even that is controlled in how you can do it. And there's so many people that are in businesses that maybe don't have that control, but they've allowed that level of control into their lives through their own mental weakness. So we've always done it this way. And this takes me to where when I used to consult, I would just walk away from a client. The minute that person said to me, well, it'll be better when times pick up. I'm like, well, I can't help you. I'm done. And it would be this, what? Like, I'm done, right? Because first of all, if you're just waiting for times to get better, why'd you hire a consultant? You're wasting your money if that's what you're going to do. Because I know whatever I tell you to do now, you're not going to do it. You're going to wait for times to get better, right? That doesn't work. That's why today's a brilliant time to start a business. Everyone wants to start a business when times are great. When you build a business during tough times, you build a business that soars during great times and survives tough times. We're going to be talking more about that today in today's podcast. So if you like this line of thinking, tune in. Today's podcast is going to be being bold in the face of fear. I don't think there's been a better time in history to build something for yourself than right now. With that, I will come back tomorrow with a totally different topic for Miyagi Mornings. And remember, if you want to suggest a topic, MeWe is the way.